Phil, now we're in Act 2. Now, the difference between Act 2 and Act 1 is in Act 1, especially the emphasis in the second and third scene is on acting out things. So there's the story of the Isaac being offered, the story of the Passover. In Act 2, they're the prophetic sayings of the prophets. And so there's not things that aren't happening so much, they're what the prophets say. So you're pulling things out of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Zechariah, Daniel, and so on. And so that's going to change the nature of the material, the nature of the how you go through it. One of the big changes is that you want to, like in the other one, in the previous act, you would just mention the riddle, and then the converging would help to solve the riddle. There's one major riddle. Whereas here, there's many riddles, and there's no real way to solve it, so you want to spend more time on the riddles. Just thinking, what do you think the riddle might mean? And then the converging. So the riddle takes a greater prominence, and the converging takes a lesser prominence in the second act. Now, if we look in the first scene here, we want to develop several kind of independent tangents that point to Jesus. The first tangent is the prophecy of the coming child, and so we're using Isaiah 7, so the prophecy of the virgin birth, and in Isaiah 9, just a couple of chapters later, that a child is coming, and interestingly, it's this child will be called God. And then we have Micah and Zechariah. What's common with all these passages that you want your people in your group to kind of come away with is that the idea of a birth, son, or child is common to all these. So a child is coming, a son is born, someone is going to be born. And so we have different prophets that talk about it, and then what are the characteristics of this person who's going to be born? Well, he's born of a virgin, he's going to be called God, he's coming from Bethlehem, and so on. So those are what you want people to come away with, and hopefully the riddle and the converging is the stepping stones to allow you to be able to help your group to see that. So, the riddle might make you think. The days of eternity it talks about here in a riddle is from Micah 5:2, and that's just basically Jesus, or this coming son, was pre-existent before his birth. So what does that tell us about this person? His nature and so on. Or in Zechariah, what you want your people in your group to know is that God is speaking. This is the word of the Lord. I will pour out on the house of David. So it's me, God. But then it continues, they will look on me, the one they have pierced, and mourn for him. So all of a sudden this I becomes the him that's pierced. And then when you come back and when you see Jesus in that, then that's one of the divine claims in the Old Testament. Jesus, because God is saying it's me, but then it's me that's pierced. So get them thinking about that through questions. Do you want to answer that? Okay. So now we're going to go to scene 2. Now a second tangent, different but related to the child, is the branch. Okay, this is another pointer to Jesus, another metaphor. And the idea of the branch is it's using the idea of the kingly dynasty of David. And the way I often help people think about it is from the movie The Return of the King. In that movie, Elendil sets up a dynasty, which then Aragorn is many generations later reestablishes. But that dynasty had been cut off. And in the same way, the dynasty of David had been cut off, and it was going to be restored. And so these different prophecies, Jeremiah and Zechariah, talk about this restoration, but then they give us clues as to who and the what, and so on. And so the common word through all of these is the branch. Now as you go through this, because you've got different passages, my suggestion is, as you read, let's say Jeremiah, the who, I would do who and where or what, just for that passage, and then go on to Zechariah, who's involved, and then another Zechariah. And then when you get to the patterns, repetitions, contrast, keywords, then you might just, what patterns do you see? Because the patterns then is for all of them. You know, you see a pattern of a repetition of a branch, and so on. Now, one of the key highlights that you want your people in your group to walk away kind of getting it in some way is that the name of Jesus is predicted as the name of the branch in the Zechariah 6 passage. And so for them to be aware of that is, though the name Joshua is used, Joshua is the Hebrew equivalent of what Jesus is in the Greek. It's the same name. It's like if I said David in French and David in English. It's the same name though in different words. So make them aware of that. And the idea is that the key for insight is going to help you get you going in that direction. If you look here at the riddles, it's not who is the branch, but what is the branch. So you're in that question of that riddle, you're looking for qualities. What kind of things about this branch can you know? And apart from that it's a person, what are the qualities? That then gives you some kind of more clues as to who this person could be. You know, how can Joshua the high priest be symbolic of things to come? The second riddle. Well, Jesus is our priest, and his name is given, right? What does it mean that the sin of the land is removed in a single day? Well, I think that's Jesus dying, and the curtain of the temple is torn apart because the sins are all gone that day. You don't tell them that necessarily, but that's what's in your mind as you're leading the discussion. You're hoping for them to see. And so what the idea of the branch is it's from a dynasty, it's a king, which is a little different than the first scene, which is the son. Okay, so then your call is, well, do you want a king like that? So, because really, when someone receives Christ, you're receiving him as a king or a lord, and so you're getting them to think that way. What do you really want him as king? Now, the third scene is similar to the second scene, but it's using a different metaphor, the anointed one, or the Messiah. But that's very much related to the branch, because the anointed one is one who's anointed into the role of both prophet, priest, and king. Could be anointed in any of those. And so this introduction explains that. And again, we use different passages. We have 3 passages, Psalms, Isaiah, and Daniel. Again, I would just do who is involved, what is happening as observation questions for each individual passage, and then some of these side questions of research of text only applies to the one that's usually beside it, and then you do your patterns, repetitions, contrasts for all of them together. And the thing you want to know here is that Messiah, Christ, and Anointed One is basically the same word again, just like Jesus and Joshua are the same word. But this is, instead of a name, it's now a title. In the Daniel passage, the thing you want to note is it's a prediction of when he's going to come, and you just got to do some basic arithmetic. Yeah, you may or may not want to do that. It may not be appropriate, but maybe if your groups, you can pull out a piece of paper. Let's add, how many 7s are there? Well, there's 7 and 62, which makes 69, which then 69 7s is 483 years. And so 483 years from the start, and the start is given here in the Key for Insight by the Persian Emperor Artaxerxes, puts you around in the 30s, which is close to, around the time when Jesus died. So that's when Jesus was revealed as a king, the Anointed One. He came in on a donkey, and then he was executed. And so the Daniel's predicting the time of it, and he's right there in terms of the timing. And so there you would see the main points of your third scene.